And hello again, and welcome to Frankly Speaking, where truth is our mission, rally our realm, said as we see it, and frankly as well. I'm Joe Spina, along with Paul Crowley. Good evening, good afternoon, whatever time of day it may be.
Joe,
Yeah.
I just want to, maybe we get the cameraman to focus down on the shoes and the socks on Joe. Can we do that, please? Just get a view of Joe's.
Are you interested in my socks?
Yeah, I just want to show
We're
the audience.
reduced to that?
So I'm reminded, see those socks? I'm reminded of the Wicked Witch of the West when she got caught under the building. And,
Oh, really? You know, it was one of those things?
Yeah.
Well, you
Anyway,
know what that
nice
is
socks,
for? Because I was strolling down the Lynn Shore Drive, and I had an epiphany. And I wondered how beautiful it was and how serene it was walking down there. And I kept thinking about the city that I grew up in. Many years have gone by, but that beauty of the Lynn Shore Drive has never waned. And so,
Right.
folks, I'm going to talk about Lynn, and I'm going to talk about Lynn, the city of winds. And I'm going to start with this. Frankly, Joe, let's throw it up there. Lynn is a city of winds, folks. It really is, and you have to think about it. So if you stroll down the Lynn Shore Drive and marvel at nature's beauty, and Pedro, if you can give a little clip of what I see down there of nature's beauty along there. I mean, Paul, that's gorgeous, isn't it?
It is.
And that is...
It doesn't have to be a sunny day either.
No. That's Lynn. So Lynn wins. If you're talking about scenes and scenery, Lynn wins. Now, let's take a little walk in Lynn Woods, Paul. You know, let's trod the wood. And you know what? You relish the smell of pines. Have you ever walked through Lynn Woods often?
I walked it, run it, and I got drunk there once, too.
A few people got drunk there, by the way.
Yeah.
But
Keg
folks,
parties back in the 70s.
How unique is it for a community, an urban community, to have 2,000 acres of woods? I think you can talk to the chipmunks there, too. You seen Alvin there lately?
I haven't.
Alvin? Yeah, Alvin's there. And look, here's another thing, Pedro. Let's throw up those beautiful, pristine ponds and reservoirs that define us. Because we have probably, our founding fathers, Paul, envisioned a reservoir system equal to none. Am I correct?
Yep.
I mean, we have a tremendous water supply. I believe we get it from the Ipswich and the Saugus River.
I think I may have mentioned this on the show before, but do you know that those three reservoirs all flow into the treatment plant before it's distributed to the residents and the commercial use and all that kind of stuff? And because of how good the water is, and because of that system, they all come in together. That is why Bentwater came to Lynn.
Really?
Bentwater needed a system so that the water would always be the same, and
now, tell
it has
me
to be
about
good, and it always has to be the same.
What is Bentwater?
Bentwater is a craft brewery over on Commercial Street, over where the old Lynn Lumber used to be.
Oh, okay.
It's a pretty exciting place. I think a lot of people have heard of it, and a lot of people have participated in it. You can go there and have a beer. They have all different kinds of craft brews. You go in there, it's a microbrewery. You go in there, and they got all the glass, to the ceiling, floor to the ceiling glass, and you can see the vats in the back, all made out of stainless steel and all that kind of stuff. You can actually experience the making of the craft brew itself, and it's really quite an event, not just an opportunity to drink. You know.
So it's a win for Lynn.
Win for Lynn, and it's because of our founding forefathers having the wisdom, to have the three reservoirs. Two, to have the ability to tap from the Ipswich River whenever they need it. And three, to put in a water treatment. By the way, you were one of the founding forefathers that had to do with that water treatment facility, right?
So you recognize that fact, huh?
Yeah, right. And I'll tell you, when I was a kid, we used to get the water and sewer bill in it. So in the 70s, and it would say, don't drink the water right on the bill. And if you poured a glass of water off your tap, it would have yellow stuff like hanging in the water. And I mean,
that was fundamentally because of the pipes, Paul. The pipes, develop all types of corrosion over the years. But if you treat it with copper sulfate and a bunch of other chemicals that are not toxic to you can clarify it. Folks, I want to go down. Some of you are probably too young to understand this, but for many years in a different incarnation, Paul, and you've been in this business too, my dad owned a pizza place, that we
Embassy
sold.
Gardens.
We had the Embassy Gardens.
Long, cool woman in a black dress.
And, yeah, and he had his son, namely me, work behind the bar because that way the till was a little more balanced than otherwise. So I was a bartender for many years. Now, ironically, Budweiser was the big drink. Knickerbocker beer and Budweiser was big at that time. But Budweiser...
I thought it was Schlitz back then.
Schlitz was big, but Budweiser was really number one. But there was a problem because Budweiser started producing beer or brewing beer in Merrimack, New Hampshire, up in Nashua. That did not taste the same as the St. Louis Bud. And on the label, it would tell you where the water was.
And I remember as a kid, we used to go into the liquor store, and we used to always check to make sure it was the St. Louis Buds before we got...
St. Louis Bud was an entirely... So if they ran out of the St. Louis Bud stuff, we couldn't sell Budweiser if we wanted to, you know? So those are some of the ironies of life.
Yeah.
That's an aside, folks. Yeah. Then, we should also take pride in something else. Pedro, if we can throw up that nice scenery, it's a beautiful view. We're going to be there Saturday, I think, Paul, aren't we?
Yes.
Gannon Golf Course. And, folks, if you ever, you know, I don't know if you golf or not, and we have great parks, too. Vinny Lozzi mentioned about the great park system we have, and we do. But if we can throw up Gannon Golf, there it is. Now, that clubhouse is unbelievable. Built, I believe, during the WPA period, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the signature hole is that 18th fairway going up, and you're staring right at that.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. The other thing I want to point out is I have a nephew of mine, as you know, comes up every year. He plays Myopia Golf Course in Salem Country Club, and while he's up here, he always wants to play Gannon.
Right.
And he cannot believe. Now, he's played the 100 top golf courses in the country. Right. And he cannot believe how a municipality's golf course could be that good as Gannon. Yeah. Yeah. And he actually says that the difference between Myopia, as you well know, is an old, historic, ancient, high-level golf course, and Gannon is not that much. Right. That they're almost on par. And one costs you an arm and a leg, and about 3 horses, because they have the polo club there, too.
But, by the way, the money you pay for Myopia versus the money you pay for Gannon is it's at least as important as the exclusivity associated with it and the ability to get a tee time whenever you want.
That's true. Yeah. That's a good point. But Gannon was for the working class.
Yes, it was.
It's a blue-collar course, maintained well, and a lot of credit to the folks through the years. Steve Murphy.
And by the way, looking at it from the other perspective, you have to give all the credit to Murph for all the work he does up there, because Gannon probably gets a lot more play than Myopia, and they're able to keep it in pristine condition in spite of that. Because more play, you know, the more likely it is to break down, right?
But a win for Lynn?
A win for Lynn.
A win for Lynn. And, you know, I drove by Essex Street, and I looked up at what they call High Rock Tower Reservation or Park, whatever it is. It's actually spectacular. Yeah. Here you are. Look at that view, Paul.
Did you see the recent photo? They're lighting it up at night now, and it really looks pretty.
Do they really?
Pretty impressive.
But take a look at that view.
Yeah.
How can you beat that view?
Yeah.
Is that a win? Not only High Rock Tower, but that view, Egg Rock.
Right. Jamie Marsh once took the Ward 4 Councilor, Richard Colucci, myself, and my daughter up there, and we saw Saturn through the telescope.
Really?
They opened up the thing, and the telescope opened. I mean, it's an active telescope.
Really?
It is.
So we can find some aliens up there, huh?
It's not on a par with what's that big one that they got named after the guy who built it?
Hubble?
Hubble, yeah.
That was a guess on my part.
Yeah.
Wow, imagine that.
But it's a good one. I mean, it's cool. You press the button and
it spins all around,
and then it opens up.
But most of us don't realize what an asset that is. That's a win for Lynn that we ought to take advantage of. Right. You know, and more people should avail themselves of going up there. Here is another thing that has made Lynn quite unique, and that's our auditorium, Paul. Yeah. I mean, we have world-class acts going there. Take a look at that. Is that a gorgeous...
So that first opened up after the work that was done. It was under the Clancy administration, and Jamie Marsh was the key person behind renovating that entire thing, because it needed a lot of work. They replaced all the seats and so forth, and redid it nice. But one of the first events that they had there, it was when I was on the city council, was the Boston Pops.
Oh, I
The
love them.
Boston Pops. They had to crowd them on the stage because the stage is a little too small. But it was really, what a big night for Lynn.
Well, the acoustics in the auditorium are phenomenal because I saw Buddy Holly there. Remember him?
Yep.
Not Buddy Holly. Pretty Woman. Ray Orbison.
Okay, I was going to say Buddy Holly.
Yeah, Buddy Holly was long gone before that came
I thought
up.
you were going to say you went and saw it back in 1940 or something.
Oh,
like that,
no,
before
no, he was in the 50s, Buddy. I love Buddy. He was only about 22, 23 when the plane crashed with the Big Bopper Company, I think.
Yeah.
But that auditorium has acts and a half. I mean, Alex Cooper, who I think he's out of his mind.
School's out, yeah, that's great. Yeah,
Pat
Benatar. They had Ian Anderson, the key guy in the Jethro Tull band from the 70s.
Well, some real good talent comes there,
Yep.
and they're and getting better.
Yeah.
And
now they have, because the mayor had it air conditioned, they can do it year round with it. Before they could only do it in the winter months.
Really? I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a year-round operation, which, by the way, ties in very nicely with the fine dining that we have in the city of Lynn. So if we can throw up that little graphic, we can delight and dine in the city, and that's a win, too. And if I missed anybody, it's just a matter of space.
Yeah, he left out the bowling alley, by the way.
Which one?
The sports center, the bowling alley.
That's yours, Paul.
That's fine dining at
Its
that's
best.
dining at its
Two hot
finest.
dogs and a cheeseburger. But really, the auditorium, in conjunction with activity, the arts, and the rest of it, has a whole bunch of upscale restaurants that have opened up in the city of Lynn and catering to a lot of folks.
So I've eaten at every one of them, except for District 45, which is a relatively new one. I got to get in there and try that. I heard it was very good. Maybe a little bit pricey, but it's very good. That's on Lewis Street.
Well, the Blue Ox has its own reputation. Tony's got probably the best steak tips you're ever going to get, and not bad with those fried clams either, let me tell
Clams
you.
are awesome.
I have not been
Hey,
at
the sports center has very good steak tips too. Just
You talking about the Crowley Enterprise? Self-promoting.
Shameless plug.
Bob Tucker tells me that District 45 is outstanding. He loves it there.
Yep.
I have not tried it. I will. I personally like the Four Winds. I've been there a number of times.
You see the sign they call it Lake Lenapesaukee.
That's cute.
Yeah.
I've eaten at Rossetti's. I'm Italian, so I give them a passing grade. Rolli's has been consistent through the years. The Porthole. Demici's is a little different. I go there for breakfast at times, and I've got to have my pastry,
Yeah,
I've got to have that.
Neapolitans.
Oh, absolutely. And I have not been to O'Sullivan's,
O'Sullivan.
but my son has, and they like it.
They have like 50 different kinds of burgers and so forth.
Really?
I go there. They have great tuna fish, and I mean, pan seared, so it's like raw in the middle and just cooked on the outside.
Can you think of anything else we should add to that? I mean, if Monty's is
What about Trios on Market Street?
very good.
Trios is Mexican.
And April's.
In April's, oh, really good. Yeah.
So, but I want to mention Monty's because one of our viewers loves the pizza at Monty's. As a matter of fact, so don't I.
I was going there for the pizza back in the 70s.
It's Monty's.
Yeah.
It's the most
It's over
unusual
40
pizza
years.
you could. It's so unusual.
Thin crust and it's small.
But there's something about it. It's so unique. And Angelina's, one of my all-time favorites, Sub Shop.
Yeah.
What about the old line?
What about that bowling alley on the Linway, the sports center?
Sports Center, yeah. How about the old Italian place there on Boston Street?
The old Italian. Oh, yeah. The old Italian place, right?
Yeah, I'm kidding around.
Yeah.
And, I tell you took me to breakfast one day at Rick Ford's place.
Yeah.
What's the name of it? Is it called Rick Ford's?
The Little River Inn.
Yeah, red, white, and blue.
And then you got Haywood's.
Haywood's,
and
yeah.
Andy's.
And, of course, Capital Diner.
Andy's a Capital Diner, yeah.
Absolutely, So, Lynn and Brothers.
Yep. I
And
ate
if
there
we missed
yesterday.
anybody, is it the Hungry Dog?
Lazy Dog.
It is lazy, isn't it, that dog? We apologize, but Lynn has a lot of great places in our Nick's and Sasso's place, John's Roast Beef.
Tassos, yeah.
Tasso.
Yeah, what's interesting is, tying us back to the auditorium, if you don't know that there's a show in town and you make plans to go to the Ox or the Trios or something like that, you show up there and you find out that you have to wait for a table because it's so
they're
crowded.
loaded.
Yeah.
By the way, where was that? What's the name of that place you took me on Union Street that had the Vietnamese soup and the Oriental?
Pho. I call it pho. P-H-O, pho.
Pho?
Yeah. It's,
Not bad.
That's right next to Gliss. It's,
Yeah.
it's in the building that's attached to Gliss.
Not bad. I thought it was
Very
pretty
good.
Yeah.
If you like
and
so if you like Vietnamese, you have to try it. And if you have never had Vietnamese, you have to try it. You'll love it.
I like the way you say that.
Yeah.
And we're going to finish up with this summer concerts at Red Rock and art festivals, which always turns my heart. Lynn's a win in this direction. If we could throw that one up there, take a look at that, Paul. Look at that. Red Rock is gorgeous. They have music on the summer concerts for the city of Lynn. Yep. And look at that. Look at the stuff from Raw Art. I mean, that is impressive.
And the murals. The
murals that they did and the rest of it.
Very impressive.
Yeah. So all I'm saying, folks, is Lynn's a winner. Forget the other thing that rhymes with win, because let's put that aside. Let's rest it. Dominus Vobiscum, it's gone. And by the way, Lynn has wins. Swampscott's got the big blue, and Salem's got witches. Do you know anybody that likes witches? So
in October, everybody does.
one day.
For the, no, 1 month.
Well, 1 month.
Yeah.
So for 1 month, they have a little bit of a tickle. But we're year-round, Paul, here in Lynn. We win every day year-round. How do you like that one? And to make the point, and this was the genesis of it all, folks, if we turn to Frankly Joe, 5-0. You like that one, Paul? Frankly Joe, take a look at that. What is that, Paul? You tell them. While I'm looking for my speech.
It's pretty incredible that the Lynn English Bulldogs, the Lynn Classical Rams, the Lynn Tech Tigers, and the St. Mary's Spartans football teams are all 5-0.
Has that ever happened before?
I would say not, but
I'm not sure. Ultimately, a couple of them have to play each other, hoping there'll be a tie.
Now, I'm not sure. Everybody knows that English plays classical on Thanksgiving Day, but isn't it the same true that Tech and St. Mary's play each other?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
If anybody knows, please Facebook us and let us know.
But let me read my little blurb here on Frankly Joe 5-0.
Before you finish that,
can
I just make one observation? Because to that point, back in 1977, I played football for Lynn Tech, and Lynn English and Lynn Classical were both undefeated going into the Thanksgiving Day game.
And what happened?
And English was on the goal line. They were down 7-6, and they had a chance to go ahead, and they got stopped. They tried to pass play and got stopped, and Classical went to the Super Bowl.
That's in 77? What a great game that was. Yeah. I actually, to date myself, I was at the game when Harry Gannis and Judge Bullitt played. My cousin was Vinny DeGrande, who played for English High School in the Riccadellis. That was a 27-27
They would get
tie.
20,000 people in the stadium for that game, too.
Oh, at least.
Yeah, I mean, it held that many.
Yeah, I was just, by the way, folks, I was just a toddler. You know, I want you to know that. Frankly, Joe 5-0, put it up there so I can give it out. Lynn is a sports town, Paul.
Yeah.
You should know it, the Sports Center. It's produced a cadre of winning athletes throughout the years. Many have gone to enjoy distinguished careers as amateurs and professionals. Remarkably, the Lynn 4 high schools are all undefeated 5-0, which is in itself an amazing feat. But then again, these young folks are testimony to the adage, Lynn, the city of wins. Our congratulations to each and all of them, huh?
That's right, yeah.
That's the way that goes. Paul, Tech produced a baseball, a pitcher. Was it Hill? Kenny Hill? Was he from Tech?
I think he was, yeah.
Yeah, he was a very good professional baseball player. I think he, under the tutelage of, I think Frank Gehry had something to do with that too, the old Crow. Tony Caniglaro from St. Mary's, Jim
Harry
Hegan.
Aganis. Harry
Aganis from Classical, Boley Dancewich. We can go on.
Tony C. went to St. Mary's, right?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
I don't know if Billy did.
He went to he lived in Nahant, but that's like Ward 8 anyway, right?
Well, he played ball in Lynn, you know.
Right.
I mean, that's the way you got to look at it. But there were many more, and probably forgot most of them. But a lot of them, Danny Dufour went to UCLA and Atlanta.
Tony Thurman.
Yeah.
And his brother Eddie. I played with Eddie in high school.
The Aikens.
Against him, I should say.
Yeah, they were. Well, there's been a whole slew of them.
Ricky Ford.
That's another
former
one.
Ward 7 counselor, got drafted by the Milwaukee Brewers.
And what happened? Threw his arm out? Flipping cheeseburgers or what?
I have to ask him. I don't know.
Well, the point is, there's been a lot of really good athletes who have done wonderful. Gone on to college, got great careers, or some to the pros.
Right.
Paul, it's time for you. And folks, I think this is a section that we're bypassing a lot of other stuff because Paul's come up with a really fascinating bit of research. You went to Mark Levin for a little research. So
I went back to Mark Levin after reading a story in the Boston Globe, and we're going to do it. My Frankly Paul is based on a story I read this Sunday in the Boston Globe, and I'm going to share it with the audience if I can.
Why don't you read your Frankly Paul and then go into the meat?
I want to show the article.
Give him the skeleton first.
Show the article first.
Yeah.
I do things. I'm left-handed. I do things backwards. So here's,
among other things.
Can we get maybe a close-up on that? Where am I going here? Okay.
Time to reboot?
Yeah, time to reboot. Time for a reboot with a question mark. And there's a couple of founding fathers in there on their cell phones and iPads and so forth. But so basically the cover says 230 years after the nation's first constitutional convention, there's a growing movement for a new one.
Really?
So that's the headline in the idea section of the Globe.
Of all places in the Globe, huh?
Yeah,
I mean, that's a paper I can't read too often because I might burn my, it's like...
It's good for wrapping fishing.
Okay,
right.
Go ahead.
So, and generally, I don't have much use for the Globe, but it was good to read that there's talk of this. So anyway, Frankly Paul, there are those who say Congress is broken. The question is it? If so, can it be fixed? Our founding fathers were wise. They anticipated that circumstances change. So they established a mechanism by which the Constitution can be amended. That is Article 5. All right? Article 5 of the Constitution outlines the procedures by which a constitutional can be convened to alter, amend, and change the Constitution. There's currently a movement afoot to convene this constitutional convention, and it began back in 2013. It requires 2/3 of the states to call for a convention. And, well, there are two ways to do it. You need 2/3 of the states to call for the convention, or you need a 2/3 vote of the Senate and the House in order to do it, so you can do it in either way. So if Congress doesn't do it, the states can.
Congress has never done it.
They've never called the Constitutional Convention.
No,
they have
but
amended.
The states can now.
But the Congress has amended the Constitution.
Yes, with the states ratifying, though.
Right. But
Okay.
each amendment that they make has been something that they've addressed, kind of, okay, we need to ban alcohol, we need to repeal
Prohibition.
alcohol. Right, those kinds of things. They banned slavery with an amendment.
And the repeal thereof.
Right. Right. But those things were done specifically for those purposes as opposed to a constitutional convention, which leaves open what you will actually do at the convention.
So let me ask you. Oh, I'll have you finish. Then I want to ask you. Yeah, go ahead.
So to date, 27 states are on board. Generally, they're talking about doing an amendment to require that the federal government balance the budget. But there are a lot of other ideas as well. It's 7 short of the amount needed. You need 2/3. We have 50, so 2/3 is 34. Massachusetts has not yet weighed in on this, and I'd really like to see how our legislature, and more specifically our delegation, will handle these questions. So ultimately, after you get 2/3 to convene the convention, you need 3/4 of the states to ratify any changes. And
any amendments to come out of
right,
it.
that's a pretty significant amount.
It is.
So you can be rest assured that it's going to have to be something that everybody wants to do pretty much, or it's not happening.
Well, it's not going to be based on the whims of the moment. You know,
right.
I mean,
or,
you have
or the extremes.
I mean, what's happened is what happened in Las Vegas with the hysteria going on now, that we might pass something regretfully.
Right.
That has unintended consequences. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah. So the question is it time to revisit the Constitution and tweak it to the times? Your thoughts. So what we're hoping to do is over the coming weeks is to, dedicate a part of each of our shows to different matters. The broad question of should we do the Constitutional Convention put out by the state? Should Massachusetts participate? If so, how do we get them to do that? Those kinds of questions. And but then more specifically, what kind of issues do we want to talk about?
Well, I want
to balance the budget.
But I want to ask you something. It's a matter of technicality here. I noted that this initiative was brought about by the states since Congress wasn't doing anything, right?
That's right.
Congress had abdicated its responsibility.
They have for at least 10 years now.
But really did under the Obama administration, where he had complete lock, stock. You know, folks fail to realize he had a veto-proof Senate. He had over 60 senators.
Right.
And the House of Representatives was ridiculously in favor of the Democrat. They could have passed anything under the sun, and they had to go tooth and nail to get Obamacare passed. That's how bad it was.
Right.
My point is that this happened in 2013. That would have been right smack dab in the beginning of the second Obama term. Was that the genesis, the mindset of the various states saying, hey, he is ruled by executive decree, fundamentally almost dictatorial. He
was ruling by fiat. He was deciding. He basically, you know, so the separation of the powers, right? You got the judicial, you got the legislative, and you got executive. Executive is supposed to enact the legislation. Enforce it, I'm sorry, and let the legislature enacts it. So the legislature needs to pass the rules, and then the president and his...
And what's the Supreme Court do?
They're the referee. They figure out whether it's right or wrong.
Well, they would say whether a law passed by and signed by the president meets constitutional muster.
Right. Yeah. So in some respects they're a referee, but they're not supposed to legislate from the bench.
But they have been.
But they have been.
All right.
And on top of that, you have what Obama was doing was when he couldn't get Congress to pass what he wanted, he would just enact what executive orders. You hear about these things. It's gotten so bad that I think we as a society have come to the conclusion that executive orders are appropriate.
Well, actually, to be honest with you, Paul, President Trump is using them left and right to undo the executive orders that were passed by Obama.
So regardless of where you stand on the issue, need some more water here?
No. I just got a tickle in my throat. Go ahead.
So it's interesting because you got Barack Obama. So let me just take a step back. So you take all the people that like Barack Obama and his policies, and you take all the people that like Trump and his policies, and basically you've got society that's everybody, right? You either loved Obama or you hated him, and you either love Trump or you hate him, and it's not both. There aren't too many people running around that love both Obama and Trump, right?
But here's the problem, Paul. The problem is that both of them circumvented. Obama started it.
Right.
Trump is trying to work with Congress in order to, for example, tweak Obamacare. It needs tweaking.
Right.
In fact, it needs to be repealed and replaced.
Right.
So what's happened, let me just ask this. What's happened is because Congress can't do anything, it's deadlocked, right?
Yeah.
Consequently, these states said, wait a second, we got to have a constitutional convention where all of our states get together, 2/3, which the Constitution allows to happen.
Right.
And then at that point, our delegation will come up with some prescriptions, otherwise known as amendments.
Right.
And then those amendments, that doesn't end it.
Right.
Then those have to go back to the states, and 3/4 of the states have to say, okay.
Right.
Is that right? Am I got it right?
Yeah, or it doesn't happen. Right.
Okay, or it doesn't happen.
So the point you were making, though, about the executive fiat that was happening under Obama and is continued under Trump, essentially by way of reversing everything that Obama did.
Defensive mechanism.
So what you got to think about that. So the laws that are on the books don't have any staying power if they're by fiat. The only way there's staying power is if the Democrats continue to win, because they would have just kept doing more and more and more. Well, if you have Democrat, then Republican, then go back to Democrat, there's going to be 1 minute they're going to be doing these EPA rules, and the next minute they're going to be taking them away, and then they're going to do it again, they're going to take them away, they're going to do it again.
Paul,
so you never get anywhere.
What happened is this. Congress has abdicated its responsibility to legislate and to be a power. It has taken itself out of the equation.
You know why?
Yeah, I do, because they created a bureaucracy that overrides them, and they're all enriching themselves off of the bureaucracy, otherwise known as the deep state, which is called the swamp.
Right. In some terms, yeah.
Okay.
So what's really happening is they talk about how many senators are pushing 80 years of age, right? And have been around for 30, like McCain, been around 30-something years, right? These people, they have no idea what's going on back in their districts. All they know is that they're going to fundraisers and events for the people in their circles and in Washington and all that kind of stuff.
What was your first sentence? Your first sentence in on your poll was Congress is broken.
Yes.
So you're telling me Congress is broken.
I'm saying Congress
Okay.
is broken.
When you have a senator who had a deciding vote on whether to repeal or move toward the repeal and replace of Obamacare, one senator from a state that's suffering badly under Obamacare,
Right.
who, because of his animus toward Donald Trump, voted against the best interest of the United States. Isn't something wrong with that?
Especially when you realize that during his last election cycle, he railed against Obamacare and said we need to repeal and replace it. That was one of his rallying cries while he was running for re-election.
But what did he do, Paul?
Nothing. Not only did he do nothing, he prevented it from happening.
The New York Times, the Washington Post, the entire MSNBC and the rest of them, I applaud them all. The Maverick, a man of courage, a man of principle. Isn't that what they said?
Right.
Actually, he did it because he can't stand Trump.
Well,
it was petty animus.
Right. And that may be true.
No, it isn't maybe. It is true.
Okay, so it is true, but the bigger reality to me, it doesn't matter whether, if he doesn't like Donald Trump or not, it doesn't matter. What matters to me is that he told his people when he was running for re-election that he was going to repeal and replace Obamacare, and that he...
Okay. So didn't Corker.
Okay.
So didn't Susan Collins. So didn't all of them.
Right.
But you know the only honest one of the whole crew? Rand Paul.
Right.
You may not agree with his position, but he was, and Cruz and Mike Lee.
Right.
But there are a whole cadre of establishment figures in the Republican Party who you can't, like George Wallace said, there's not a dime's worth of difference between Schumer and them.
And my big problem is, and this gets back to the Liberty Amendments of the Constitutional Convention, Donald Trump is being ridiculed and castigated for doing what he promised, right?
Yeah.
Trying to do what he promised to whereas everybody else, in a very polite way, does everything they can to try to get out of doing what they promised during the election cycle. This is the reason why one thing that we should be doing as part of the Constitutional Convention is finding ways to limit the ability of a senator or a congressman from being in there for life. Whether it's term limits or some type of mechanism that holds them accountable to their constituency. Now, let me just give you an example, and this is a Republican example, in fact. In 2010, when it was clear that when Ted Kennedy died, when they replaced, if a Democrat went in, they were going to be able to do anything they wanted in the Senate, right? Because they would have had the 60th vote. Right, and Scott Brown came out of nowhere and won. Now, why did he win in a state like Massachusetts, where typically it's all Democrats and so forth? And the reason for that is because of all the money that flooded in from outside of the state of Massachusetts to prop him up. I mean, he was good, and people didn't want it, whatever. But my point is, and this is a point that I think people really need to understand, and that is, no matter how you look at this stuff, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, if these guys are allowed to fund their campaigns from outside of the state, they're not our senators. They're somebody else's senators.
Paul, Elizabeth Warren from out of state made Scott Brown's out of state money look like peanuts. And she is an absolute positive profile of out-of-state money. And so was this Seth Moulton from the 6th Congressional District.
And let me just say, I am not trying to say that this is a Republican thing and Scott Brown did this or that. My point is that there was a time when the senators were appointed by the state legislatures.
Elected by the state legislatures.
They were appointed.
That's right, but they had a vote on it.
Right. So in other words, the state legislature would decide who would go to Washington to look out for the interests of the state. Now, whether it was Scott Brown, Seth Moulton, Elizabeth Warren, or there's a slew of other ones across the country, no matter what, if they're being put into office by outside money and outside influences, how are they ever going to take care of the interests of the states that they represent? They're not.
Paul,
And that's what needs to be fixed.
Well, Harvey Weinstein gave a ton of money to Elizabeth Warren and Seth Moulton probably, but he didn't give a dime to Scott Brown. So it's where is the money coming from? Who are the people who are getting the money? That's the key. If you have an institution that's honorable, that wants to, for example, the Tea Party is, right? That they all vilified. But the Tea Party, what was their agenda?
Look, I don't want any Tea Party members from the other 49 states or anybody influencing who's going to be the senator from my state.
So are you going to bar any spending from outside of the district? No, is that what you're saying?
No, I would like to repeal that amendment that allowed for the voting of senators.
That can only be done by a constitutional convention. The states taking the power back again.
You know what? Why don't we do a constitutional convention? We'll get the states to support it, and then we can. That'll be one of the things that we push
But let me ask you this: why are the states doing this? Because the key here.
Because Congress won't do it because they will take away their own power.
So what you're saying is the states turning on it and saying, we're going back to original intent, which is the federalism, otherwise known as well. That the states do what they want, and the federal government does what it's supposed to do.
Right.
And what not to be dictated to by the federal government.
Right.
So the concentration of power that's taking place is fundamentally a phenomenon of modern Democratic Party and socialist communists who want one vote, one man. They want to get rid of the Electoral College, for example.
They do, right.
The Electoral College, and the reason why they do it, and Hillary Clinton is screaming and yelling, I want the popular vote. No, we don't know whether she really did, because we don't know how many of those votes were legal.
And that doesn't even, that's
not
irrelevant.
the predicate on which you run. You run an Electoral College for a specific reason. Our founding fathers were very wise about that, too.
Yeah.
That you have to run in every state, not just in the populated states. The places like Montana, and places like Vermont, and places like Wyoming that only have 3 electoral votes would be completely overrun. There would be the tyranny of the majority.
Right. Well, you just think about, the last presidential cycle, right?
Yeah.
Massachusetts was clearly in the Democrat corner. They voted for Hillary Clinton. I don't know why, but they did. All right. So So how much electioneering was actually going on in the state of Massachusetts, other than the commercials and stuff like that? There really wasn't much of anything. It was autopilot commercials, and they were going to all of the quote swing states because that's where the action was, right? That's where they had to make the difference.
Apparently, Hillary Clinton miscalculated. Because she didn't go to Wisconsin. She didn't spend time in Michigan and in Pennsylvania because they had the hubris to think that that was theirs in their pocket. I'm going to say this to you right now, Paul, and I'll say it to you folks out there. There is no chance in hell that the Democrats are going to carry any more of those Rust Belt states. It's gone. It's over. Remember how the South went from being Democrat to Republican? Yep. The similar thing is going to be happening right now in the Rust Belt states.
They're in trouble, and it's not getting any better.
What, do you honestly think that the Republicans are in trouble?
No, I'm talking about the Democrats.
They're in deep trouble.
It's funny because, like in the last 2 years of Barack Obama's administration, they were talking about how the Republicans couldn't find themselves. And
they lost 1,000 seats under Obama.
Right.
1,000 seats, Paul. The outside of Massachusetts and the East Coast, Atlantic states, and California and the Western states, everything else is sane.
And so think about it. California, right? 55 electoral votes.
That's right.
It's a huge state.
Can we throw that up, by the way, speaking, we mentioned the Electoral College, Pedro. Can we throw up a little map of the Electoral College? There it is there, Paul. And it has nothing to do with college, BC, Harvard, and the rest of it, right?
That's where the votes come from. So if California...
55, you're right.
If the popular vote in California favors one candidate over another, the 55 votes go to that candidate, right? All 55.
If it's only a one-vote majority, that person wins all.
Right.
It's not proportionality.
Right. It's one. So they get the whole state. So that's the difference, as opposed to so if they got 10,000 votes in California and everybody voted for Hillary Clinton, all 10,000 or 10 million of them, it wouldn't matter. It would be the same as winning by one, right?
That's right.
That's the difference. And if you don't do it like that, what you end up having is a problem where small states like Massachusetts, Wyoming, Montana, and so forth will get nothing by way of interest from the federal, from the election cycle, because they won't have any influence over the outcome.
Well, Massachusetts, when I was a puppy, had 16
Right, and that number is declining.
to 9.
Right.
All right, because there's been a shift in population to other states.
Right.
If you take a look, folks, up there at Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, I believe there's Vermont, Hawaii, they all have 3 electoral votes. Now, how electoral votes are allocated, you see that number 538? That represents the 435 reps, and there are extras from Samoa, American Samoa, you get what I mean? Virgin Islands.
Yep.
And the 100 senators.
Right.
And that's how you get the total of 538. So every state has 2 senators. Now, if you notice, there are some states that have 2 senators and only 1 rep.
Right.
So when in order to win, that's the magic number, 270.
Right.
That's the magic number, right?
Which is 50% plus 1.
Right. So when Donald Trump was taking a look at how do I win this election, what was he looking at?
Same thing that Hillary Clinton was, although she...
No, she didn't see it. She thought she had it made.
He was looking at states where he could make a difference.
He was looking at one thing and one thing only, called 270. How do I get to 270? How do I patch together enough states that get to 270? I don't care about anything else. That's exactly what he did.
Right. Right. And if had Hillary won, she would have claimed, she wouldn't have worried about the popular vote.
But he won overwhelmingly in the Electoral College.
Right.
It wasn't, just a squeaker. Don't forget, but in both instances, actually, George W. was one state in each instance would have flipped and it would have been the other way. Folks, you think about John Kennedy as president, he's idolized in the Commonwealth match. He probably didn't even beat Richard Nixon.
Right.
I mean, that's how razor thin it was, and all types of shenanigans took place that's been documented.
Right.
And if you don't think that they play games in elections, you're out of your mind.
Right. Forget about the Russians. They're doing it internally.
Of course, there were places in Pennsylvania in which more people voted than existed in the counties.
Right.
And they weren't voting for Republicans.
No.
All right. And that's not an exception. That's not anecdotal. That's a pattern throughout the country. That's why they had ACON. That's the, community organizers do that type of stuff. They whip out votes and phony votes. Do you remember someone got disqualified for running for ward council in the city? Why was that?
Because they
fudged the signatures.
Right.
So anybody tries to tell you that
stuff like that doesn't happen
it happens the higher the level, the more it happens. The stakes are greater.
You want to hear, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the air before, but and it's kind of related, but not. So Barack Obama ran for the state Senate, and he also ran for U.S. Senate, right, before he was president. In both races, he managed to find a technicality to get his opponent disqualified both times. So he
got beat the first time he ran against Bobby Rush. Was it Bobby Rush?
I think so, but he lost that one. So, but the 2 that he won, he ended up winning unopposed because he found a way to disqualify them from. So his advancement had nothing to do with his ability to win an election, and had everything to do with his ability to manipulate the system to his advantage.
Paul,
just a thought.
What's happening in South Chicago as you and I speak?
Probably somebody getting shot right now.
Right, shot dead, not just shot dead. So if you were from that area and you're a community organizer from that area and you became president and everything, where would you go afterwards?
Probably the very first thing I would be doing is trying to figure out a way to stop that problem.
All right, to upgrade the area, right? Would you buy or rent a multi-million-dollar home and put walls all around to talk about walls in Washington, D.C.? Would you be sitting on $15 or $20 million? So tell me, where is the integrity in that, Paul?
I don't see any integrity.
You were talking about folks that get into politics. John McCain's worth tens of millions of dollars.
Right. On a $175,000 a year salary.
Yeah, well, he's not the only one.
Oh, I know.
Okay. And if you turn around and you take a peek, particularly on the Democratic side, Nancy Pelosi, folks, is sitting on tens of millions. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton are sitting on $200 million, and she said, we were broke.
Right. Something funny here's a funny story about that whole thing is they castigated Donald Trump for being wealthy, right? he earned it legitimately in his business dealings over the years, right?
Yeah, and he went bankrupt 4 times, which
Right.
goes to show he came back again.
Right. So he earned it, went out and earned it.
Yeah.
Every one of the people that wanted to see him get kicked out started with nothing and used politics and their position of power to gain their wealth.
Did they employ anybody? Did they build anything that lasted?
Staffers to build their empire.
Well, the point is that they create any wealth.
No, none. They just
They're all vampires.
right. All they did was
They sucked the reservoir.
They consumed the wealth.
Exactly. So the one who put the Ipswich River is Donald Trump. He's the guy that puts the water in the reservoir for us to drink.
Right.
These politicians, they drink from the reservoir, they drain it,
And there's nothing
and,
left.
and there's nothing left for the rest of us.
So back to the point, Article 5, I think that this is something that the state of Massachusetts, we're used to being at the forefront of movements and so forth. I think we should be part of this in a big way.
Take a look here, Paul. The
Yes.
federal government is broken. Is an Article 5 Constitutional Convention of States or a modern declaration of cause the best way to fix it, okay? This is what's happening now. All that Article 5 talks about is how do you change, amend, upgrade, modernize the Constitution. Now, what are the 3 steps you need there, Paul? You can see better than I.
So you either get 2/3 of both House and Congress or 2/3 of the states.
So there's 2 mechanisms that can set it off.
Right, and then regardless of which way you go, you need 3/4 of the states to ratify an amendment. So
Why do you think the Founding Fathers made it difficult to change, to amend?
well, they first of all, they believed in what they had established, but they also knew that they needed to, I would say, I mean, what their thinking was, I don't know, but first of all, that Constitution needed to be, it's a foundation of I mean, a Constitution, just look up the definition of a Constitution, it's what you're built on, right? You can't make it easy to change, simply put. But you can't eliminate the ability to change it. So you make it hard.
But they understood human nature.
Yeah, and
They understood human nature. That's the key to our Founding Fathers. They said, wait a second, knowing human beings, we like them, but, and they try to put checks against human behavior and the whims and the passions of the moment.
Right. Yep. What's that expression? So we're a nation of laws, not a nation of men running the country.
We're a nation of laws, not of men.
Of men. That's it.
But they tried to. There were those who try to circumvent that. There are people who've been trying to pervert what our founding said.
For power.
What is this big thing? What is how do we say it?
Antifa?
What's Antifa all about? Isn't that trying to get rid of the Constitution? Folks that don't kneel at football games, they're in effect vitiating the Constitution, aren't they?
Right.
Okay, so that's what's wrong. People don't understand. There are those who want to change the fabric, want to change the rules of the game.
Right.
They want to play Patizzi even though the game's Monopoly.
Right.
You get what I mean? And that's the problem. Paul, we got to get to comments.
Okay. We have some good comments.
Comment number 1. I love this one. Speaking of, remember we talked about 150 million, you said 120, telling me about Pat McManus and how he dealt with the state for zero this and that and the rest of it. But here's the critical thing. Don't buy a house in a flood zone, and you get your shoes wet. I think that's right to the point.
It is, yeah.
And what are you going to do about it? Can you do anything about it, Paul? Get galoshes. So have Capano get all the people down there some galoshes and some pumps.
And while a lot of that is true, I think it's important to understand that it isn't just that when we get heavy rains that we get flooding. We get a lot of sewage backup as a result of it as well. The sewage backs up into people's basements and stuff like that, and that's hazardous waste coming into your house. And
Paul,
that's not...
I spent $40,000 to do my basement over, and I took a canoe down there on 2 occasions with a sump pump. Most of it is not sewerage. It comes up through the toilet.
Most of it is not
Most of it is just...
But there is storage too.
But it's diluted. That's very rare.
Down on Bennett Street, it happens all the time.
Well, that $40,000 I spent to do my bathroom, my basement now is Spartan. I learned my lesson.
Right, you're not going to put anything down there that
Not
gets
another
ruined.
nickel's going down on that cellar. They kept telling me, oh, this is a once-in-a-century psalm. Well, I got it twice in 1 century. You know, it's supposed to be once in a century. I got it twice in 2 years. So, who's this? Paul, what's this mean? Salt them out to the richer communities.
So this is about the influx of students into the Lynn school system.
Well, what's the word salt?
So, in other words, distribute them out, put them in more, if the richer communities had to absorb some of these kids,
So he's saying,
then the funding would arrive quickly.
but the point, I think, now that I read it and understand it, which is well taken, the minute you start spreading these out to the other communities, you'll find funding coming to the city of Lynn because they don't want them going. So, so the problem we're having is not that we don't want to help these kids out, because Lynn also wins as a city of compassion.
That's right, yeah. That's
All right?
Yeah.
So we take in all kids and we educate all kids.
Right.
And you should know, you're with GLIS, that's compassion enterprise.
Yep.
So, folks, another win for Lynn is compassion. So I think he's right, or whoever wrote the he or she. You know,
I agree. They'll say, you know what? Why don't you just stay there? We'll just get you some more money. That's what they'll do.
by the way, you got to get number 3 because it's all about you, Paul.
It is.
Yeah.
So about Amazon potentially choosing Lynn for a second headquarters. I agree with Paul, but have questions as to why, with people leaving over time, they had fewer parking spaces. I was told that only spaces for 80% of employees' cars would be available due to an EPA rule that was there also encouraging carpooling. Therefore, 80% of 50,000 employees would be 40,000 more cars on the Lynnway, not 500. Maybe Amazon could pay for train fares for its employees or just deliver them to work by drones. Jeez.
That's a pretty, huh? You know, when I say that we have a very erudite, intelligent, and thoughtful viewership, I'm not exaggerating, Paul.
No, I agree.
I mean, this is real good stuff that we get off. Humor, insight, you know, and the rest of it. By the way, keep it coming, folks. You know, I mean,
and I know I'm going to keep coming back.
wait a minute. Can I applaud you, Paul, because someone agreed with you? We got to wrap it up, Paul. Good.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, look, I need to hear what your comments are regarding Article 5 and the idea of going to a constitutional convention convened by the states and Massachusetts' involvement in that. Hopefully, we can get something going on that. And
what I'm interested in, Paul, is what would they do when they convene it? What type of changes would they like to make? You're saying you'd like to see the Senate go back to the
appointed
state house.
by the state houses.
If that were the case, Paul, the amount of Republican senators would go up about 10 or 12. You realize that?
Well, I would much rather see
But do you realize
it be
that?
balanced. But
do you realize that would happen?
It would. So
Okay. So who's against that?
all the Democrats.
Of course.
Right.
Do you think the Democrats want to have the states take over more power? I mean, isn't that what a block grant is? Isn't that what they're trying to do with Obamacare? Isn't that what Trump is saying? He says, listen, I want to give power back to the state. Isn't he doing this with EPA in every aspect? Didn't he just allow the states in order to buy across boundary lines and the rest of it by executive order?
Yep.
He'd rather not. He'd rather have Congress affirm it for him, but they give him no choice because Congress has gone to sleep, Paul.
Right.
You know?
Right.
They are not legislating.
But like you were saying earlier, the idea of amending the Constitution was never meant to be an easy thing.
No.
And if doing something like that, like you were just talking about, would take a long, 2/3 of senators, and they
3/4, and we're plumb out of time. See you next week, folks.